HS2 and its impact on the Chilterns and the Colne Valley Regional Park. The route emerges from Copthall Tunnel under Harville Road in Harefield, alongside the Ickenham Auto Transformer station. Continuing along the Colne Valley South embankment towards the Colne Valley Viaduct. This crosses the Colne Valley Regional Park near Denham, passing over a number of lakes, the Grand Union Canal, the River Colne, as well as Moor Hall Road and the A412 North Orbital Road. It is 2.1 miles long and is now the longest viaduct in the UK, yet it would take trains just 40 seconds to traverse it. This is looking along the viaduct across the first of the lakes, Harefield No. 2 Lake. According to the architects, the viaduct's design was inspired by the flight of a stone skipping across the water. Where the viaduct crosses lakes, the 80-metre spans form a sequence of low, slender arcs that skim lightly over the surface, preserving landscape views across the water. Over land, the spans are shorter and the piers more conventional. Landscaping continues under the viaduct. Here the Colne Valley Trail, part of the London Loop, has been realigned on its original route, passing under the viaduct alongside the northern end of the lake. During construction, the footpath was temporarily diverted on a pontoon over the Grand Union Canal. Here we can see the smaller land-based piers as the viaduct crosses the canal and then on across Save Lake. Then crossing Moor Hall Road. And Corder Lake. The lake is part of the Mid-Colne Valley Site of Special Scientific Interest. The nature reserve also includes Long Pond, the River Colne and the western side of Broadwater Lake. There is currently no public access during construction of the viaduct. The route then passes close to the Denham Water Ski Club. Before crossing the North Orbital Road, the A412. Then reaching the north abutment, the northern end of the viaduct. Construction was completed last September and it has now been handed over to HS2. Landscaping and planting below the viaduct continues. The route then moves on to the Colne Valley North embankment. Approaching the Chiltern Tunnel South Portal across the newly created Colne Valley Western Slopes. Here 127 hectares of former agricultural land is being restored to biologically diverse grassland, reminiscent of the rare chalk downlands found in pockets across the Chiltern Hills. Over 50,000 trees native to southern England are being planted. This is the only section of the route in Hertfordshire. The 3 million cubic metres of chalk removed during tunnelling have been used here, and such is the size of the project that it has increased Hertfordshire's chalk grassland area by almost a fifth. In some places, the chalk is 20 metres deep. This is the Tilehouse Lane cutting, and the North Orbital Road can be seen at the bottom of the picture. The route passes under Tilehouse Lane overbridge and then onto the West Hyde embankment. The lane and all the public footpaths crossing the route in the area remain closed. The approach to the tunnel is in the Chiltern Tunnel South cutting. Here you can see the porous portals and the trackside West Hyde auto transformer station. You can also see the close proximity to the M25. Portal is just another name for the tunnel entrance and exit. As a train enters a tunnel, it generates a pressure wave, which can produce noise at the other end of the tunnel. A porous portal slows the build-up of pressure in the tunnel, reducing the resulting effect. The crosses show the area we'll now be looking at from the M25 across the central Chilterns to Wendover. The next section of the route is a 10.6 mile long twin bore Chiltern tunnel. This shows the 4 tunnel ventilation shafts across the Chilterns. There is also an intervention shaft near the North Tunnel portal at South Heath. They would also be used for emergency access during operation of the railway. The tunnels are up to 90 metres below the ground, at their deepest as they pass under Gore Hill just before reaching Amersham. The A413 is the main road running past the Chalfonts and Amersham, then on to Great Missenden and Wendover. Now that construction of all the shafts is complete, I'll give a quick timeline of their development. The first shaft is the Chalfont St Peter vent shaft situated in Chesham Lane, not far from the Chiltern Open Air Museum. Here we're looking east along Chesham Lane in 2016. The initial enabling work started in 2019. An excavation of the shaft itself got underway in 2020. This is the construction compound alongside Chesham Lane. Once the shaft was complete, work began on excavating the basement alongside the shaft. This is 2 years later, in April 2020, soon after the tunnel boring machines excavating the Chiltern Tunnel have passed below. A year later, excavation of the basement was completed. Work then began on constructing the head house, which sits on top of the shaft. Although technically they are single story, they are much bigger than we expected. The original artist's impression gave a good idea of what the surface buildings would eventually look like. Chesham Lane is on the right. Demobilisation of the site started last October and construction was completed in December when the shaft was handed over to HS2. On the left is the plenum. This is essentially the vent outlet. And the remaining constructions are the access hatches to the basement. Chalfont St Peter is the deepest of the shafts. The tunnels themselves are 55 metres below ground level. To put this in perspective, Nelson's column will fit in the shaft above the tunnels with room to spare. The lift descends 12 levels before reaching the tunnels. This is looking across the basement from the plenum towards the shaft, and the hatches can be seen above. A 400-metre long temporary haul road links the site directly to the A413. It has now been confirmed that this will be removed by a line, the contractors responsible for constructing the vent shaft. The temporary traffic lights on the A413 will also be removed. They've been in place for more than 5 years. Chalfont St Giles vent shaft is situated at the top of Bottomhouse Farm Lane. We're looking north towards Old Amersham. The A355 runs up Gore Hill to Beaconsfield. The shaft site is just to the north of Bottomhouse Farm Lane. Enabling work started here in 2019. Fusion were the enabling works contractors and their compound was situated on the southern side of the lane. Allion are the main construction contractors and their compound was situated on the northern side of the lane. Excavation of the shaft started in 2020. And here we're looking north along the tunnel route as it will pass under the shaft. Once the shaft was complete, the basement was excavated alongside. As with all vent shafts, the secant piling method was used, and here you can see the interlocking piles before the walls are lined. Once the basement was complete, work began on the surface buildings in 2023. Demobilisation of the shaft started in June and construction was completed in July when the shaft was handed over to HS2. Looking north across Bottom House Farm Lane, this is an artist's impression of what the site will eventually look like. This is the plenum, and this shaft also has an auto transformer station, basically a voltage regulator. And these are the basement access hatches beyond the head house itself. This was taken last year, September 2025. And this was more or less the same view exactly 5 years earlier. This is looking across the basement from the plenum towards the shaft. And the top of the shaft itself. Stairways and lifts have been installed. Alas, the lift cannot be used, so it's the stairs down to see the tunnel. This is the cross passage between the tunnels, also known as an adit. And this is the downline tunnel looking back towards London. The metre-wide walkway runs the length of the tunnel. A temporary haul road, half a mile long, was constructed to link the site to the A413. Like the road at the Chalfont St Peter shaft, this will now be removed by a line. As well as the bridge over the River Misbourne, and the traffic lights on the A413. The Amersham vent shaft is situated in Wilden Lane, just west of Amersham Hospital. The A404 goes to High Wycombe, and the A413 turns right towards Great Missenden. Looking west under the A413 towards Wilden Lane. This will be where the entrance to the shaft is situated. Enabling works got underway in 2020. And this is looking east across the site from Wilden Lane. And looking northwest towards the A404. Ground investigations showed exactly where the shaft will be located. Sheet piling was then installed alongside the A404. The site is quite compact, and the office accommodation had to be constructed on the south side of Wilden Lane. Excavation of the shaft began in 2021. A diaphragm walling method was used to construct all the vent shafts. Murals on the hoardings surrounding the site depicted the history of Amersham. Once the shaft was constructed, work got underway in excavating the basement. The tunnel boring machines passed under the shaft in February 2023. Construction of the head house started the following year. The size and layout of the site dictated that this had to be round. The initial design was controversial, to say the least. Following consultation, the height was lowered and the fins that would have been added to the roof were removed from the design, as were the plans to illuminate it at night. The head house was completed last year. A feature of the overall design is the 200-metre long boundary wall which surrounds the whole site. It is lined with precast flint panels which reflect the use of these stones in local buildings. Gabions, steel baskets filled with mixed flint, line the outer perimeter of the site alongside Wilden Lane. Landscaping continues and there will be extensive planting outside the boundary wall. Construction of the shaft was completed last November when the shaft was handed over to HS2. Now that I've got used to it, I think the design fits in well with the location. Now we're looking towards the basement access hatches and the plenum beyond. There's no auto transformer station at this shaft. This is within the head house looking towards the shaft access. This is looking north in the up London bound tunnel. Trains will speed through here at 200 miles an hour. Looking across the basement towards the top of the shaft, this is where the fans will be installed, extracting the air from the tunnels as a train approaches and then blowing it back once it has passed. And looking across the basement towards the plenum, the shaft outlet. At the end of 2025, Align were awarded the contract to install the mechanical and electrical plant at all the sites. Work on this will start later in the year. This is an artist's impression of what the shaft would look like. And this is the reality. Yeah, it's a very accurate depiction. The temporary office compound and car park opposite the ventilation shaft will remain in place and will be removed once railway systems have been installed. The Little Missenden vent shaft is situated alongside the dual carriageway section of the A413. Ground investigations here in 2019 gave an early indication of exactly where the shaft will be situated. As with all the sites, there were extensive archaeological investigations before any work got underway. The enabling work started in 2020, with frequent lane closures past the site. Excavation of the shaft got underway in 2021. A traffic light controlled right-hand turn off the dual carriageway was created, saving HGVs a 5-mile return trip to the roundabout at Great Missenden. Occasional extended working hours meant the site lighting looked strangely impressive to passing traffic. Once the shaft was in place, work began on excavating the basement in 2022. Here the tunnels are 24 metres below the ground. Here we're looking across the basement to where the plenum will be installed. Construction of the head house and associated buildings began in 2024. This is an earlier impression of what the head house would look like. And the reality. 1,700 trees will be planted, some 20 different species. Over time, the planting will ensure that the shaft will be hardly visible from the road. Construction of the vent shaft was completed in December, and this is the entrance to the site off the A413. And the approach to the head house on a wet and dreary December day. Like the others, this is single story and more in line with the size we expected. And this is the auto transformer station. And the location within the station for the transformer itself. Looking past the basement access hatches towards the plenum. This is the passenger lift and staircase to the base of the shaft. And looking across the basement towards the shaft. And the finished basement with the plenum and access hatches in place. The basement gets quite wet at times with a mixture of condensation and rainwater coming in through the plenum. The Chesham Road intervention shaft at South Heath is the last of the shafts. Here we are looking west along Chesham Road past the site entrance. Enabling work started in 2020. Footpath GMI 33, which ran through the site, was diverted during construction. Excavation of the shaft got underway in 2021. Because the shaft is above the water table, a different form of construction called the caisson method was used for this shaft. Sections of the caisson were constructed above ground and then sunk to the required level by excavating material from within the caisson. As it is an intervention shaft only, it will not have any fans, so does not need a basement. Once the shaft was complete in 2023, work got underway constructing the head house. This shows the top of the shaft and construction of one side of the head house. Again, they are referred to as single story. Effectively, there are two separate head houses with one acting as a backup for the other. There is no basement, so all the machinery will be above ground, but I don't know why they have to be quite so big. You can see the auto transformer station to the right. Construction is due to be completed in January 2026. And this is the entrance off Chesham Road. And the two sections of the head house either side of the shaft. And this is the auto transformer station. And the entrance to the head house. As there are no fans, there is no plenum, and as there is no basement, there are no access hatches. This is the passageway linking the two buildings. The tunnels are 33 metres below the ground, 9 floors down. Here we can see the Chiltern Tunnel North Portal, just over half a mile from the Chesham Road shaft. Sibley's Coppice is the piece of ancient woodland between the two. The portal is just north of Frith Hill to the east of Great Missenden. And this is looking south from the portal back towards Frith Hill. This short section is where 96 concrete supporting pillars known as barrettes were constructed. The tunnels run through deep alluvial clay here, which is not strong enough to support them. When the TBMs arrived, they bored through sections of the barrettes to form a safely strengthened tunnel. Looking north, these are the porous portals. Backfilling around these continues. Beyond, a line-side ancillary building has been constructed. Looking along the South Heath cutting towards footpath GMI 12 overbridge, construction of the portals is now complete and the concrete batching plant has been removed. Here the concrete base is being broken up and removed. Trains will leave the tunnel at 200 miles an hour. The entry portal, in this case the up line, is longer than the exit portal. And this is the shorter downline portal. All the tunnels built for HS2 will have porous portals other than the Euston Tunnel and the London end of the Northolt Tunnel. Here trains will not be travelling fast enough to require one. Construction of the line-side ancillary building is now complete. And this is an impression of what the portal will look like over time. The route continues for 2.7 miles in the South Heath cutting under a series of bridges. In this section, these are all over bridges, meaning that they cross over the railway. The route alignment has been designed to enable speeds up to 225 miles an hour north of the Chiltern Tunnel. The first of these bridges is footpath GMI 12 overbridge. Here you can see the footpath abutments and a newly constructed bat house. All are within what was once the garden of Mulberry Park Hill, the first and by far the most expensive house to be demolished in the Chilterns. Looking south, this is a visualization of what the footbridge will look like. The tunnel portal will only be visible from this bridge. Looking south along the South Heath cutting under the bridge towards the tunnel portal. And on the left is the bridge east abutment. Footpath GMI accommodation overbridge is the next bridge. It is an accommodation overbridge, which means it will be used for vehicle access as well as for the footpath. The bridge is now in place, and once construction is complete, the footpath will be diverted across it. The footpath has remained open with three-man crossings, taking walkers across the trace, effectively the track, then the Hall Road, and finally the site access road. The footpath is now closed for a year to allow excavation of the South Heath cutting. This means a lengthy diversion for walkers via Frith Hill and Potter Row. Potter Row doesn't have a pavement, which means pedestrians will have to walk in the road. All footpaths in this section are now closed. Leather Lane Overbridge is the first of 3 road bridges. Originally, the bridge was to be built offline to the south of the lane, which would then have been diverted over the bridge once construction was complete, thus avoiding temporary closure of the road. As a result of sustained pressure from the Leather Lane Conservation Group, new plans for the bridge were drawn up and were approved by Buckinghamshire Council. The design minimises the visual impact on the surrounding landscape and facilitates the movement of wildlife. 16 oak trees have already been felled here, but the original plan would have seen the loss of over 80. The bridge is now being built online, meaning that the lane has had to be closed for 14 months. Construction is now well underway. Once the bridge is constructed, the South Heath cutting will be excavated below. The cutting continues towards Grim's Ditch. Sheet piling has been installed to safeguard the remains of the Iron Age earthwork. The route continues in the South Heath cutting beyond Grim's Ditch. Footpath TLE2 accommodation overbridge is the next bridge. As it is an accommodation overbridge, it would give the farmer vital access to the land to the west of the route. Once the bridge is completed, the footpath will be reopened and diverted across the bridge. Just to the north is Bowood Lane Overbridge. The South Heath cutting has been partially excavated. But large-scale earth movements are now suspended during the winter. Looking west across the bridge, which is single track. As the bridge is being constructed online, the lane has been closed for over 3 years during construction, twice as long as originally envisaged. The lane will eventually be reinstated across the bridge over 2 years later than planned. This is the first bridge to be opened in the Chilterns and only the second one north of London, albeit at the moment just for cyclists and pedestrians. The public footpath that ran alongside the lane remains open and has been diverted over the bridge with a manned crossing of the Hall Road. All other footpaths crossing the route between the Chiltern Tunnel and Wendover are closed during construction, so this is a vital diversion route for some, including the very popular Chiltern Way. The route continues along the South Heath cutting, past the remains of Jones Hill Wood, towards Wendover Dean Viaduct. The viaduct is clearly visible from the A413. This will be the first fleeting view passengers will have of the Chilterns since crossing the Colne Valley Viaduct. Durham Farm was demolished to make way for the viaduct and has been rebuilt to the east of the original location. This is looking south from the viaduct along the Wendover Dean South embankment and into the northern end of the South Heath cutting. The viaduct is 450 metres long and up to 20 metres high. The viaduct is the first major railway bridge in the UK to be built with a double composite structure. This uses significantly less carbon-intensive concrete and steel compared to a more traditional design. The top deck is currently being installed, involving 19 concrete pours. And this is the travelling gantry being used. So far, 7 pours have taken place with an interval between each one. And this is one completed section. There are architectural features attached to the viaduct, and you can see one that's already been installed here. The Chiltern Way will eventually pass under the viaduct on its original alignment. The White House in the middle of the skyline is where it crosses King's Lane. The route leaves the viaduct onto the Wendover North embankment. Continuing in the Rocky Lane cutting, then onto the Small Dean South embankment as it approaches Rocky Lane. Then across Rocky Lane underbridge. This is the first underbridge, means it takes the line under the railway. Offline construction meant that the road remained open during construction, although it was closed for 6 months in 2025 to complete the tie-ins and the removal of a section of the lane. Looking east along the lane, this shows its realignment from the original route. Here, sheep piling is being extracted from the original lane now that it has been removed. Huge amounts of material will be used to create the Small Dean South embankment that will take the route over the lane and on towards Small Dean Viaduct. Pedestrians and cyclists will have to take their chances under the bridge. And looking back under the bridge towards the A413. And looking west from alongside the original route of the lane. The route continues on the Small Dean South embankment towards the Small Dean Viaduct. HS2's longest and heaviest single-stage deck slide was successfully completed in January 2025 when the 4,500-ton structure was slid into place over 4 days. The viaduct deck was then lowered onto its permanent bearings. Concrete deck pours were then undertaken in stages throughout the year. Parapets are now being installed. The Chiltern Railway was closed over Christmas, allowing the section over the railway to be put into place. In 2023, the A413 London Road was realigned to enable the construction of the first piers close to the railway. The following year, it was realigned for a second time to construct the final piers of the viaduct. The North-West Rail embankment has now been reinstated in preparation for the final realignment in the autumn. Later this year, the viaduct will be available as part of the haul road, allowing dump trucks to cross over the A413 and the Chiltern Railway. The temporary conveyor system will then be removed. It has saved literally thousands of HGV movements along the A413. The viaduct is due to be completed in 2027. This is an impression of what the viaduct will look like once completed. There will be noise barriers along the top of the viaduct. The underside of the viaduct is just 6 metres above the road. A shared foot and cycle path will be constructed alongside the main road as it passes under the viaduct. This will eventually form part of the Misbourne Greenway project, designed to link Wendover with Great Missenden. The route leaves the viaduct on the Small North embankment. The last of the bridges in the Chilterns is the Grove Farm underbridge, giving access to Grove Farm to the east of the route. Smaldene Lane will eventually be rerouted under the bridge. This won't happen until the embankment is completed in 2027, much later than anticipated. In the meantime, the Chiltern cycleway remains disrupted with no safe cycle route available between Wendover and Dunsmore. Unfortunately, the contractors EKFB have not been able to find a reasonably practicable way of providing sufficient public safety to reopen the cycleway earlier. The route continues on the Smaldene North embankment past Grove Farm. It is being built using layers of crushed chalk bound with cement and will rise up to 14 metres above the current ground level, acting as a dam for water running off the adjacent fields, diverting it to the north. A massive underground cistern is being excavated just south of Backham Lane and Wendover Green Tunnel South Portal. This will drain into a 2.4 metre diameter culvert, which is currently being tunnelled south from an access shaft next to Backham Lane. The tunnel boring machine is expected to finish the initial 350 metre south culvert to the cistern early in 2026. It will be then brought back to the Backham Lane shaft to head north alongside the Green Tunnel to emerge just north of Ellsborough Road. The route then enters the Wendover Green Tunnel. It is a 3/4 mile long cut and cover tunnel being built by excavating a cutting in the ground, forming a tunnel box from precast concrete segments and then covering it over with landscaping. This is looking south from the tunnel south portal along the Small Dean North embankment. Backham Lane is now closed until the end of the year. A temporary link road has been built connecting the lane to Aylesbury Road. At the request of local residents, it's single track with a public bridleway running alongside. And this is looking south along the link road from Aylesbury Road. Here we are approaching Aylesbury Road with the link road on the left. The cutting here is 29 metres deep. Obviously, Aylesbury Road is closed during construction and has been diverted to the north, crossing over the cutting on a Bailey bridge. Looking south under Aylesbury Road Utility Bridge. The width of the cutting through Aylesbury Road was minimised to reduce the number of houses that needed to be demolished, but this introduced a civil engineering challenge. Normally, alongside the trace where they are constructing the railway line, they have space for a haul road for the massive dump trucks, as well as a tarmac site access road. However, the size of the gap meant that was not possible through this short section, and they couldn't build the tunnel until the dump trucks had finished their work. The tunnel will be assembled in 4 phases, and this is phase 1. Designed as a double arch, the tunnel has 2 separate halves for southbound and northbound trains. 5 different concrete precast segments are being slotted together to achieve the double arch. Each one is steel reinforced, with the largest weighing 43 tons. Over 2,500 segments will be used, and they are being made by Stanton Precast in Ilkeston, Derbyshire, and transported by road. Phase 2 starts at the south portal next to Backham Lane and is now well underway as it approaches the Aylesbury Road cutting. Phase 4 will eventually link the 2 sections when it is installed next year. Backfilling of the first phase of the tunnel has started, with large quantities of aggregate being slowly positioned as the first step in the cover process. Great care is being taken with the loading onto the shell to avoid another Tesco tunnel collapse, as that tunnel was being built over the Chiltern line at Gerrard's Cross in 2005. When finally completed, the tunnel will be covered by about 2 metres of earth for landscaping, with the adjacent land reverting to agriculture. Looking across the tunnel towards Wendover. North of phase 1, construction of phase 3 is also underway. The HDVs delivering the segments one at a time are a familiar sight on the A413 and the A355 from Beaconsfield. Looking north along the tunnel towards the north portal. This is alongside Folly Bridge, the last of the bridges over the Wendover bypass. To give an idea of the exact location of the tunnel, the South Portal is alongside the first of the bridges, which takes Backham Lane over the bypass. A new side access road from the Wendover bypass has had to be created. This involved the removal of a long roadside tree line, which are outside the land defined as available for use. It is not yet clear how the tree line will be restored. The route leaves the tunnel into the Wendover North cutting. Passing under Nashley Road overbridge. This is currently under construction and Nashley Road is temporarily diverted over another Bailey bridge. The track is expected to be below the normal groundwater levels here. In order to stop water getting into the cutting, a low permeability tanking wall has been installed. The wall goes down 30 metres through the porous chalk to form a seal with the underlying impervious clay. The wall goes down both sides of the cutting until Nashley Lane, where the chalk rises to ground level. The top of the walls can be seen either side of the trace. Excavation of the cutting within the walls is expected to continue until the end of 2027. While the wall will stop water getting into the cutting, it is also expected to reduce the groundwater flows east of the railway into Stoke Brook and Wendover Brook that feed the Western Turville Reservoir. The Environment Agency studied the modelling and concluded that more water might be needed into Stoke Brook, so an underground spring chamber is planned near the King's Farm shop to increase that flow from the adjacent fields. HS2 then leaves the Chilterns and continues on towards Stoke Mandeville and the Vale of Aylesbury. Early last year, HS2 confirmed that the railway's 2029-2033 opening schedule could not be achieved. They are now finalising a new range of credible cost and schedule estimates. In other words, they don't know when the trains will run, nor how much HS2 will cost. HS2 is now at an advanced stage of a comprehensive reset, hoping to put the programme's construction in the right sequence and bringing certainty to the railway's final costs and opening dates. When the plan to build HS2 was announced in 2010, services were expected to start in 2026, this year. We will have to wait at least another 7 years, and the London terminus will be Old Oak Common, and not for some more years, Euston. A driving force behind HS2's revised scheduling plan is the completion of an initial section of the HS2 route where high-speed trains will be tested, the test area. This will be delivered in phases, and the first section is approximately 50 miles long and runs from Washwood Heath in Birmingham to the north portal of the Wendover Green Tunnel. The completion of civil engineering works on this section of the route is now the overriding priority, ready for rail systems. According to HS2, the need to operate within the annual funding envelope from the government is why decisions have been made to defer works elsewhere on the route. For Wendover, this means that they will continue to keep building and progressing with the programme to ensure that they are able to fully deliver the critical pathway for the HS2 test area. The aim is to run the first test trains in 2031. You can see most of the pictures I've used by visiting the HS2 photo diary on the Chiltern Society website. This shows the impact at a number of locations across both the Chilterns and the Colne Valley Regional Park and is constantly updated. There are also links to various videos, including a virtual fly-through along the route from Denham to Chalfont beyond Aylesbury.